Thank you for listening to the Echo Oscar Delta podcast, where we talk to Navy EOD techs and hear the stories that they want to share.
It happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, today we got Matt Wheeler. We met at the training unit at FTX, I think. That's where we actually met and worked there for maybe a year or so together? Maybe a little bit more?
Yeah.
In and around
Almost
there.
2, yeah.
You've been out, 6 years now?
4.
4 years?
4 years. I retired in 2020.
Okay, nice. God, I don't know why. Sometimes it just feels like,
It goes by quick.
Yeah, I think probably because I left the training unit at the end of 2017. So it kind of, but yeah, we've been in talk, for, like you're saying, about a year to try and get.
About a year
try
to
and
do
get
the
this done,
podcast, yeah.
Yeah, so here we are, man.
Yeah, we are.
Appreciate you coming out and
Absolutely.
being able to share some of your stories and whatnot. So, man, I don't know where you want to start, but we can, if you got a spot, or if want to start it just transitioning and then go into career stuff.
I was talking with Seamus.
Yeah.
And then I was talking with Adam Fleck and a few other people. And I was very apprehensive about whether I do a podcast. And it wasn't anything. I love what you're doing. I think you're doing a great job. But see a lot of these podcasts, they talk about, a lot of people try to talk about like war stuff, like gunfights or, killing people or whatever. I think the biggest reason that I wanted to come here was more of like the mental health aspect.
Yeah.
The addiction side of it.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people would not want to talk about it. Maybe they don't want to advertise it, but there was years that I struggled with a lot of it. So if you talk about the transition into it, I mean, even when I retired, I had a hard time with it, trying to figure out where I was going to go. And then it took me a while to accept the fact that I had lost all these people I had done and seen all these terrible things.
Right.
A lot of people don't know this, but they put me in the brig for 6 months just so I could sober up.
Yeah.
And that happened right after I lost Scott. Now I say it as I lost Scott, but he and I were together since 2005. And we thought we had kind of made it, right?
Yeah.
We had lost Tyler, Bobby Wood got hurt, Trevor Maxwell got hurt, Brad Snyder got hurt, Taylor Morris got hurt, Caleb Nelson, Nick Check, and I'll never forget, he left the training unit and was excited about being on a CRIP team, and we never thought that if you're going to lose a guy, that you'd lose somebody like Scott. Thought that he was immaculate at his job, and that's kind of where I took it hard. Because we all just, like I said, thought we made it, and I struggled for a while. I had been selected to be an LDO. I'd also just gotten selected to be a senior chief, and I fought to go back to Marine 12 to do another NSW platoon. And Steve Veal, Craig Smith, both of them kind of argued against it. They wanted me to stay.
Yeah.
Kind of like Stoyer.
Right.
Have them stay, take time off. And I refused, and I wanted to be a platoon chief. And it wasn't where I should have been. There's so many people that have told me that they call it redlining. right? I was running at 9,000 RPMs for the longest time, and I needed a break. And it was a hard dose of reality when I finally broke. And thing is I can't convey on how to convince people, because we always want to operate.
Yeah.
We always want to do our job. I don't know when that moment was. I really don't. But essentially, I just broke. And when I broke, I went in drugs, alcohol, and finally took me kind of falling off the map were Mr. Faraci, Magnolia 12, Jay Higgins, love them all to death. They sent me to the psych ward and then the brig to sober up. It
Yeah.
took me 6 months.
Yeah, you mentioned this. I think it's a good thing. We're getting a lot more people that are willing to talk about different aspects, right? And it's affected them at different levels, right? And the hard part is exactly what you say. Like, I think for every person it's different, but figuring out the right way to convince someone that doesn't want to be convinced that, hey, you got to take time. And I've talked with a few people, and I think sometimes too, that slowdown at the training unit side or at a shortet, sometimes that's where it all, like, when you're at that level, you especially during the wars, right? You saw a lot of guys that were sitting right at that red line, right? Usually just under, and then they'd kind of like peek over and just kind of do that little wave back and forth. And then when you go to the training unit or a shortet where everything kind of slows down, and you see other dudes that are still going at it, and
You miss it.
yeah, everybody joined to do that thing, and it's hard to, like, I think it's hard for two reasons too, and I still don't think we're good at this, but it's hard because you see it and you want to do it, but it's also hard because we're not actually resetting at shore duties.
No.
Like we're running and we're running, we're just not gunning.
Right.
And so, like, when you're sitting there, you're like, well, shoot, I just want to add that one piece of the equation, I'll be fulfilled, you know?
Yep.
So
No, I mean, it was
tough.
It was one of those things. So, and because we're doing the podcast, I'll kind of bear it all. I'm the fifth generation to be in the Navy,
Yeah.
but they were all sailors.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if I could convey it, a perfect example is, like, a lot of people say, well, would you do anything different? Right? It's, I mean, then I have to mention everybody, like Ty Logan, Pat Massey, Vinny Lettieri. I mean, there's so many people, Scott Dayton. You admire them. You want to be like who they were.
Right.
And I came in, so I made it through school at 2006, and that's all you heard about.
Mm-hmm.
Fallujah, Afghanistan, everything. And that kind of gives you, like, the credibility, the clout, right? The hard part is that you can never confirm that you're good at your job until you actually do it. You can train, train all day long, right? It'd be, whether it's nukes or chem or surface IDs or skydiving or whatever, you can practice all day long. The second that you actually do it, then right? You got that kind of pin on your chest, like, you're good at your job. And I do feel like I was trained by the best, and I felt like I did well at my job. But then that's where that first part of the addiction comes in, was being good at it.
Yeah.
Right? I always sort of push the boundaries, and people would, like, there's not going to be anybody that watches this that says I didn't do it, right? I had Eric Brower, I had everybody who's like haircuts, shaves, uniforms, and I just pushed the boundaries, right?
Yeah.
But when you do it operationally, you have to push the boundaries because the textbooks, the publications, the TTPs, all that stuff goes out the window. You have to figure out a way to maneuver it. And I think it was Tony Bondero. I was gonna try to go to Green Team again. I had rolled out originally. Johnny Novella was with us, and it was one of those things where it was like, well, I want to go back. And Tony Bondero had just come from what he was doing, and kind of said, doing a little too much. It's like, you need a break.
Yeah.
Well, the training unit, it's not really a break.
Yeah.
Especially running surface IEDs. I had a great crew. Chris Lemus, right?
No.
Great guy. Johnny Novella was another one. Andrew Kaminsky, all of them great guys. But we would work 60 to 70 hours a week, and I never really had an opportunity for downtime.
Yeah.
And I always thought about it in a jaded way. Right? I didn't have a home life. I have the twins, but their mom lived in Fredericksburg, right? But they always would tell you to keep your stuff in order.
Right.
And you'd see that stigma where it was like a guy is not doing well in his marriage, right? And you kind of, I wouldn't say we would judge them, but it was always like a gray, jaded area, right?
Yeah.
Like something's going on. And if I had my personal and my home life right, I'd have been that much better at my job. But I used the job as an outlet. Rather than my job being a job, I used that to give me a purpose and give me a reason. It wasn't, I didn't have a wife, I wasn't married. I had my kids. When I was present, I was a good dad. But I also like the admiration. Who's going to go? Oh, Wheeler's going to go.
Yep.
And I did that. Did that for years and years and years. I skirted those lines, and I had people time and time again be like, hey man, take a break.
Yeah.
And when I finally retired in 2020, I'd been in 16 years, 17, something like that. And there is nothing worse than sitting in the rig, sobering up, coming off the painkillers, coming off the alcohol, coming off all the other dumb shit that I was doing, just sitting there myself. Because in the brig, you don't have a cellmate by yourself. You can have one book. My book was the Bible, and I just thought about all those times people were like, hey man, just take a break. And then group has done a great job, and they took care of me. There were people out there that didn't necessarily agree with how I did it or why I did it, and I don't disagree with them at all. But group did a great job of allowing me to get my retirement, get my disability and everything else. And I think the hard part is now I look at it from a leadership standpoint, being 40 years old, and I've been out for 4 years, raised my kids, went to college, graduated. The paradox is, how do you convince somebody that's me or you 10 years ago? What conversation do you have with somebody like me when I am the asshole that I am, right?
Yeah.
Stubborn, right? Mean, fucking full of what they say, piss and vinegar.
Yeah.
Who would have had that conversation where I would have listened?
Right.
So, a lot of people go on podcasts and they'll talk about the gunfights and the killing and the bombs and all this other stuff. I think the biggest reason that I believe in what you're doing is to get it out there for people to observe. And when I say, how do you convince somebody like me? You can't.
Right.
I knew every day.
Mhm.
I knew every day that I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning and I had to have a fucking drink or I had to take a painkiller and I knew that I had to go run on the beach. I knew that for years.
Yeah.
I knew it when Scott died. I mean, people just have to be self-aware. They just have to accept it. I took a lot of time to lose my pride. I think it was the brig that told me to kind of realize that you're not that fucking special.
Yeah.
I went to the brig and they take your rank. You're nobody. I've mopped floors. I've cooked. I was there for 6 months. And when you realize that you think you're special, but you're not that special, and you realize that everybody's going through it, once you have that baseline, then you start to realize that, man, if I could just ask for a break, told them no.
Right.
Like, no, I can't do it. Right. And that was kind of the hard part. Was finally coming to that realization. It's like, yeah, you're not that special. You're just like everybody else.
Yeah.
So,
Been doing a little bit of stuff with EOD Warrior Foundation and doing. I was on a call a couple days ago, and it's the call was just trying to figure out what the EOD community needs, whether it's active or retired, and then kind of if there's any programs that they could start up to help that. And there's several guys that either were, for them were on the way or thinking about like ending it because of just everything, like overwhelming side, and ended up coming back. And one of the things that one of the guys had said, and all of them have said it at different times in different ways, but it kind of goes back. I think it applies for that side, for the whole getting help on any level of the mental side, right? Whether it's just I'm not even thinking about the suicide portion. I'm just thinking about like my life is going down, and I need some help with that, or all the way to that side. It's like you said, until what we have to do, being the leadership side, anybody in that position, is you have to be ready and willing to help when that person decides to actually action it. Because until they action, you can force a lot of people to do it, and very few of them are actually going to make that change, right? If they're not ready. So, but just kind of, I think we are getting better in this, but just kind of being there for people and letting them know, like, hey man, like, at least letting them know, like, you're going too hard, you're going too far. We can help you out if, like, just dial it back as needed, and then if they're willing.
Well, and you make a great point. So the reason that is an excellent point was I had never really been a leader until I made chief and I was at the training unit, stood up, advanced demo, whatever. And I don't mean this in a bad way or a negative way, but I watched a lot of guys. They got to the training unit, the marriages started to fall apart. They fell into drinking. They made bad decisions, right? And there was always this stigma with getting help, right?
Yep.
I went to NICO. I thought it did great. I think a perfect example, and I'm not trying to put anybody's business out there, but everybody that knows stories, Cam Jackson.
Yep.
We started to watch him deteriorate, and we just thought he was being crazy Cam, right?
Yeah.
Running around with a dildo in his pocket, just being crazy, right? And then the incident happened.
Yep.
And they did pull his crab, but they wanted to pull his crab. And Craig Smith and Steve Beal Hot Rod, all of them kind of took a moment and said, well, this isn't really like him. Let's get him the NICO. Let's do a sleep study. Let's see what's going on. That's how they found out that he had brain cancer.
Right.
What was it, a year later, he passed away. And I mean this in the most respectful way. Had Cam had some self-awareness, and again, if you're asking me to be Cam, I'd have never admitted it.
Yeah.
But if he had said, hey, something's not right. Like, he wasn't the same Cam. He wasn't thinking the same way. He was just bouncing all over the place, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying we could have saved him, but how many of those instances are we going to interact with before we realize, like, hey, we have to do checkups on people?
Yeah.
Right? I know the divorce rate's high. Divorce rate's high because we're gone all the time.
Yep.
Especially in the height of the war. I mean, I think there was times I was gone 290 days between training and deployment.
Mm-hmm.
I lost touch with my oldest son, Jacob, who's an amazing man now. But for some reason, I chose to do the deployment rather than stay home and take care of my kid.
Yeah.
You know, it turns into that addicted personality. You get addicted to it. I mean, it's just like everything else. I mean, shit. When I retired and I had to go to court, they looked at all my stuff, and my lawyer would tell you, he's like, I think it was like 12 speeding tickets.
Yeah.
It was like 8 of them reckless driving back when I lived in Virginia Beach. I mean, I used to run down Shore Drive 100 miles an hour on my motorcycle, just balls to the wall, just trying to get that feeling.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Just that,
Absolutely.
right. So sometimes people need to find a different outlet. Some of them work. Some of them have great lives, kids, whatever. But that will only last so long.
Yeah.
I think the most profound thing that I ever learned through all of it was talk to yourself when you're shaving. Now I got a big beard, right? But I still shave up here, otherwise I look like Wolfman. But look at yourself.
Yeah.
Look at yourself when you're shaving. If you don't like who's in the mirror, it's the only person that can fix it. A lot of people don't even realize that.
Yeah.
They take showers, they take baths, they go through day to day. But you have to look at who's in the mirror and realize that is your reflection, right? But like, a reflection's not the terminal word. Like, yes, it's a reflection, but that is you. You have to be able to look and have a conversation with that person. If you don't like who you are, then that's the only person that can fix it.
Right.
Kids aren't going to get you out of it. Your job's not going to get you out of it. Your wife's probably tired of your bullshit, right? And we can only tell sea stories for so long,
Yeah.
right? I used to do that day in, day out. I used to go to chicks and, people would tell these stories. Oh, you remember that one time where you did this to that person and blah, 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 like on deployment? Still have to go home and lay down.
Yep.
And then somehow justify the whole reason that you're there. I think that group, Naval Special Warfare, EOD, all of it, I think that they are starting to hone in on it. But the hard thing, especially like with the suicide thing, is I've been there. I don't like to call people out, but I mean, Mike Dial saved my life. The reason doesn't matter, but I had a noose in my garage.
Yeah.
Had a heavy bag. I mean, everybody knows me. I like to fight. Had a heavy bag hanging from my truss in my garage, and I'll never forget. He was a chief or a senior chief. I just gotten out of jail. The mobile unit was trying to keep me. They were doing their part. I wasn't doing mine. But I'll never forget when he came in there and he saw that. It broke his heart. And at that moment, letting him down, I was like, I'm better at this. Now, did I make the right decisions? No. Sent me to SARP and I relapsed and I ended up in the brig and the rest is history. But I'll never forget those moments where, especially with Mike, like letting him down, that was one of those turning pages. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
but a lot of people don't realize it. It doesn't happen overnight, right?
Right.
You don't wake up one day and you're like, I'm gonna get sober.
Right.
I'm gonna be a good person. No, you have to fight with it every day,
Yeah.
and I did. Took me longer than most. I wish I would have stayed in, but when they gave me the option to retire, I left Virginia Beach, moved to Fredericksburg, met a great woman, started to be a good dad, started working for a company that I love, and I fixed chainsaws and tractors, and but it took years, took time for me to process it, because survivor's guilt is real.
Yeah.
It does exist. I never wanted to call it that. I didn't want to seem like I was a pussy. But it does exist and it is real. But this community has come so far. We just have to lean into it head on every day and allow people to just talk. Like, one of the hardest things I learned was just talking about it.
Yeah.
Like, you were there. I was at Seamus's going away and went back to his house, and he just had a lot of questions. He didn't know what happened or, why I fell so fast, so hard. So I just started to tell him. And I told him those stories, and then it gives me peace every time I talk about it. Now, it's not always easy.
Right.
I cry, I have nightmares, take medicine, I have a service dog. But I'm a proud dad. I was proud of what I did for the country.
Yeah.
And I think the second that you realize that you are human, you don't have to be fucking Superman.
Right.
You can just be a guy. You can hurt, you can be sad, be angry, but we all need help. And I think a lot of people just struggle with the fact that they think by saying, well, I need help, makes them weak, and it doesn't.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And that's one of the reasons why I talk about like going to mental health and just doing stuff. Because I think, I don't have anything that's that crazy or glaring. However, if you add up all the like little things that I do have, if I don't start addressing those, man, like I think one of our like people in our community, one of our biggest, it's a benefit when it comes to while we're actually working. It's a negative pretty much all the other times is the things that like would bother us, we tend to like ball those up, put those somewhere else. Problem is like, we throw that in the trash. We just never actually take the trash out, right? And so eventually that trash fills up and it starts overflowing, gets into like now we can't help but deal with it while we're at work because there's so much stuff, and that's kind of one of the reasons why I went. And I'll go consistently, and like I got to make an appointment because I had this weird thing. I know, I guarantee that it's just because I don't deal with certain things, but like the the emotion side of things that should not make me like get teary eyed or like have like some crazy watching some ridiculous commercial, you know, and it doesn't even have to be a sad commercial. Yeah, like and I'll start to like feel a way, or like even just being out and like seeing something. It's one of the things watching it for me. It's really dads and their like young sons or daughters. When I see like a kid doing something and like the dad handling it in like a way better way than I usually do, like that like gets me, you know. And I'm like, man, I don't know, it just feels weird, right?
Yeah.
But I'm like, as I started thinking about those things happening more and more, I'm like, man, I'm sure I got something I need to unpack, right? Like,
Yeah.
I may not know what it is, but that's where that goes. And like, if I know that in the past when I have done that, before anything becomes huge, you're starting down that slope.
Mm-hmm.
You go and get help before you're hitting the bottom, and it can bring you back. And you're constantly going to have waves. You know, life is ups and downs, right? But
Well, and I think the crazy thing that a lot of people won't admit is that take the war and the death and the killing and the loss, put all that to the side. Think about the person that it takes to go through just the process
right,
to get pinned, right?
yep,
Well, then what happens? Show up to a mob unit, you're nobody. The first thing that you're looking at is a senior tech. Well,
Yep.
what does it take to be a senior tech? Well, you want to be a Hearst gas master. You want to be a dive suit. You want to, right? And then you just run yourself to the gauntlet. Well, in 5 years, hopefully you can do your master board. You remember the master board process?
oh, I do.
Right. Everybody does, right? That fucking thing sucks.
Yep.
And you're sitting there for 30 days just going to town, and then you're thinking about, LPO, hitting your fucking wickets, being a chief. And then what ends up happening is while you're doing that, you're running yourself into the ground. You're probably not taking care of your home life. Now, I'm saying, is it manageable? Yes. But it's in manageable situations.
Yeah.
It's hard to, if anybody watches this, and I hope they do, I would rather them be completely happy mentally. And I'm not saying that the standards should change. That's not at all what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that you have to know exactly where your place is.
Yeah.
But as a leader, you also have to know how to manage those people. So that doesn't mean that every free fall class you have to send somebody. It doesn't mean that you have to drive your guys to hit these wickets all the time. Because how well do we really know our guys?
Right.
I was fortunate. I spent years with the same people. I mean, shit, even after Dan Owens and I lost Tyler, we ended up working on Surface together. Scott passes away, but we spent all that time together. He was one of those guys, him, Rick Thomas, that knew that I was slipping.
Yeah.
And you have to learn your guys.
Yep.
But as a new guy, you have to also understand your limitations and be cognizant of what you think your expectations are. Because now there's not a war to chase, right?
Right.
Back in the day, you used to, it was, I think I did Iraq, Afghanistan for a year, Afghanistan with 75th Regiment. I mean, it was just as much as I could do it, right?
Yep.
Because every time I, got that award or I got that eval or I did whatever, when it broke, the wheels fell off.
Yeah.
And I was sitting in a brig. And I'm not saying that people didn't see it. Everybody warned me. but it's one of those self-reflections that you have to do in order to prevent it. And we all know. We know if we're not being good husbands. We know if we're not being good parents.
Yep.
Right? But you can talk to an LCSW or a therapist all you want. Change comes from within.
Yep.
And I don't think that this workload's going to change, and I hope it doesn't. I think it's manageable. I don't think that standards should change. I think we should just start looking at people as people, not as tools.
Right.
Because the second that I tell you that you're an LCPO, well, that's what you think you are. No, you're Jabron. You have a job to do.
Yep.
Second, I start making you this tool rather than this person, you drive them to be a tool and not a person.
Yeah.
That's a shitty part.
Yeah. It's true. I think you know, again, I think it's weird. Our job's not the only one like it, but you know, our motto that I've never given up on, but the community did for a little while. The
initial success told failure.
Exactly. It works great for the job. The problem is that's not most of life. And like we're just talking about that with a few guys, a guy brought it up. And like I'd never really thought about that, but we get so used to that. You know, as a junior guy, there's huge benefits that I had. Said it a few times, right? I didn't have any kids. I wasn't married. Coming like starting out, huge benefits. I didn't have anybody to care about except for me, right? However, I think there's drawbacks as the years go on. Is I remember when I got married, right? And I told Michelle, and when it was just me and Michelle, I'd told her like, hey, I'm gonna, the Navy comes first. Like you're my wife, but the Navy comes first. There's more people that count on me there than at home. It's a pretty fucked up thing to say. I wish I wouldn't have thought about it then. The slight benefit, although if she were sitting right here, I'll say what she would say after I say it. The slight benefit is once we had kids, I verbally changed that.
Right.
What she would say is, yeah, but you didn't physically do anything about it.
Yeah.
It took a while, but I think the hard part is like, yeah, you get so used to doing that it becomes, you know, I go all in, I go 100%. They're, you know, getting in, an 86 passes, which is still a really high standard. And I agree, we don't need to change that for work, but then we start taking that to like every part of our life. And that becomes unmanageable. Going for 100% every time and thinking that if you get the 86 is what happens when you get an 86. You're like, I'm a failure. Like I passed, but I'm still a failure. Right. And you take that to every part of your life. That is so I did a talk for EOD Warrior Foundation. I did a small like segment, one of a bunch of people that said some stuff. And my thing was just on sustained stress. Like you were talking about earlier, it doesn't have to be going to war back to back. Just this job and the way we approach it, you end up at that red line and you just stay there for years. Whether you're on sea duty and getting ready to deploy back to back or whatever, even if it's not combat, you're preparing as if it's gonna be. Right. And then you go to the, you know, a training unit or a shortette, and you may get a little more time off if you're at a shortette training unit. You might work a little more than you did. Right. But either way, your level is still so high that's the thing that we got to figure out. You know, individually, we have to help our guys if we're in that position, but individually, we have to figure out that way to like be able to transition. It's hard though.
And I think there's a lot of people that might end up watching this and be like, you know, I don't know if I'm allowed to cuss, but they might be like, oh, pussy.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I think one of the most profound things that I've experienced, you know, I've lost a lot of guys. Shit, I killed a lot of people, right? One of the most profound things was Mike Day.
Yeah.
I'll never forget, Scott and I were at Team 10, and he was my CQC instructor. And everybody used to talk about him. Motherfucker's been shot 26 times. He was in a room, pistol, bow, 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 right? All stitched up, all fucked up. Same deployment that, I think it was the same deployment. Don't quote me on this. Jason Redmond got shot in the face, Vinny Lettieri, Chris Jewett, all those guys. Anyways, he was retired for almost 10 years. And he killed himself.
Yep.
Now, does that make him a pussy? Does that make him a quitter? I mean, no, it doesn't. My firm belief is that guys like that commit suicide, they're just tired.
Yeah.
You have the nightmares, you have the long nights, you have the anniversaries, you have everything. And guys like that, they just are tired. They just don't want to live the rest of their life that way. Now, I'm not speaking for him. I can't tell you if he got help, would he be okay, or would he still be with us? It's not what I'm saying.
Right.
But the second that you acknowledge that you're not Superman, that you're a guy,
Yeah.
a lot of people don't acknowledge that, especially your generation and mine. I mean, I watched the trade centers fall.
Mm-hmm.
I went into the military wanting to fight a war.
Yep.
But you had guys way before me and you had guys after me that did it for over a decade. I mean, that's what we did, right? All right, so that was your adult life. Now what do you do? Right? Whether you do 6 years, 10 years, 20 years, 35 years. I mean, there's guys that are asking me about retiring. My first 2 years were hard.
Yeah.
They were very hard. I mean, my wife will tell you, they were drinking, and this is after, so I was sober for 2 years after the brig. Went to Yorktown, did my short stay, did my paperwork, and I walked out of that door and I went right into a bar. And I had, man, I drank, I did everything. And just kind of saw where it was all leading. And what I ended up thinking about was, how do I honor everybody?
Mm-hmm.
People back in the day used to wear these little memorial bracelets.
Yep.
Got to a point where Scott and I said, well, we're just going to start tattooing them, because who wants to wear fucking 8 goddamn bracelets? And I just looked at it and I said, well, if I'm going to honor them, then I'm going to do it by being a good dad. I'm going to do it by being a good husband. But it doesn't happen overnight.
No.
So.
No, and it's it's like anything too. Like, you can, every day you wake up, you have to make that decision that all the things you like you said, gonna be a good dad, gonna be a good husband, gonna be a good, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Every day you wake up, you have to, all right, that's what I'm gonna do today. Those are good, my main goals. And oh, by the way, yeah, I'm also gonna be productive at work or whatever, right? But the main thing is those, and if I can knock those out, then I can do all the other stuff.
Absolutely. And the hard thing is realizing that you can't do it on your own.
Right.
I think between SEALs, EOD, divers, SWCC, and I don't know the Marine Corps, I don't know Army Special Forces, I don't know any of that. But I think between those special operations, I think back in the day they said it was like 0.1 or 1% of the Navy, right?
Yep.
So this doesn't apply to everybody, right? It's those guys doing it day in and day out. And you don't even have to tell anybody. Just, I have to go talk to somebody.
Yeah.
Just let it out. Because what ended up happening is when you have that conversation with somebody, and do you remember Moriarty?
Moriarty. I remember the name
Yeah,
at the
group.
training. Or
A group.
a group? Yeah.
Yeah, she was a LCSW. And the biggest reason I respected her was I had done a lot of these mental health appointments, and I had every time I had a social worker. I was like, "Oh, I know what you're going through," and I was like, "No, you fucking don't.
Yeah.
You're 24 years old.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
30 years old, and I've been fighting a war for a decade. You have no idea what you're talking about."
Right.
I admired her so much. She didn't say anything. She just listened.
Mm-hmm.
And I talked and I talked. I talked about the kid's mom. I talked about just shit back home. I didn't even go like down the rabbit hole of like, well, I lost this person, I lost that person. I just had an absent venue to just get it out.
Yeah.
So where that shit's in the trash bag and it starts to overflow, that was it. It's all that I needed. I just needed a way to discharge a lot of hate and resentment just for life in general. And I think the biggest thing that I hated the most was how underappreciative everybody is. Right? Go to Target, you go to Walmart, people are rude. They don't say please, they don't say thank you. And I just started to hate everybody.
Yeah.
Started to hate myself, started to just, and then I got that opportunity, and it made me just start to learn to talk. And you know, my wife is great about it. I know she hates it sometimes because all I do is just talk.
Yeah.
She's probably like, shut the fuck up. But I just talk, and I'm just like, yeah, this happened. Or you know, I talk about Tyler, I talk about Scott, I talk about Caleb, I talk about everybody. I love everybody.
Yeah.
But you love that hard and start to hate that hard. And I think we love our friends, we love our leaders, we love our subordinates. And the whole reason that we do what we do is to be elite, right?
Yep.
Well, with that comes a lot of self-reflection. And I think that people are starting to learn it, but I hope they learn it now before the next war starts.
Yep.
Because it will happen again.
Mm-hmm.
We will go back. I mean, we had the Gulf War, we had the War on Terror, then we had the Operational Inherent Resolve. I mean, it's gonna happen.
Yep.
And some of the junior guys now, not knowing what that pain, that hurt, that guilt, that loss is, unfortunately, and I hope not, but they might end up learning it. And that would be my biggest regret, was to just not tell people to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I do. I am happy that Navy EOD specifically, and it seems like we are significantly more ahead than the other service EODs, but has put together the strike program and actually has it so that like even when it first started, there was, you know, a fair amount of stigma to like, yeah, I'll go and do the workout thing, but like the psychs, nah.
yeah.
Slowly that's getting better and better, where like people are understanding. You can go there. It doesn't have to be the like career ending reason why you go there. Like it's most people that go there talk about things that have nothing to do with whether you're going to potentially stay in or get out,
Right.
whether it's forced or not, right?
Right.
99.99, I don't know the actual percentage, but most things that people talk about have nothing to do with, like, even if it got out, which it wouldn't,
Right.
because that's the whole purpose of it,
Right.
But it's literally just exactly what we're talking about. Like, go there, get those things off your chest, be able to talk, right? Because I saw a thing, and you know, I think it's more true more often than not that I think men in general feel like our job is to not burden other people, right?
Mhm.
And so I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of us don't talk, is we're like, I don't want to give you my problems. I know you've got your own stuff. I don't want to put mine on you.
Yeah, I'll just deal with it.
Yeah, mine, I got it.
Right.
It's fine.
Yeah.
I mean,
And where I started to actually come to terms with it was, now I will say it, I drink now, but I don't drink all the time, but
No.
I do drink. But 4 or 5 years ago, that's when everything came out.
yeah.
It would be me and the guys at the bar. It'd be on an anniversary or a birthday. I mean, Scott's birthday was just July 30th, right? Tyler Trahan's was, May 2nd, but he died on April 30th. Just all this crazy shit. But that's not where you need camaraderie.
Right.
You need camaraderie every day that you show up to work.
Mm-hmm.
The second that guy says, "Hey man, I'm not doing right," that's the hard part. You need him to tell you that.
Yep.
Just like the man aspect that you're saying. Convince your guys to be able to say, "Hey man, I need a break.
Yeah.
I'm not doing all right." You give them that opportunity, you give them that avenue, you will get it back in tenfold. Because then that develops trust.
Mm-hmm.
It allows them to feel comfortable talking to you. It allows them to say that you're family. So who do you talk to like that? Right? This isn't just a job or an occupation. Anybody that lives in San Diego or Whidbey Island or Guam or Rhoda or Virginia Beach, it's a lifestyle,
Mm-hmm.
right? Do it day in and day out. Well, with that lifestyle should come a little bit of semblance of family.
Yeah.
So instead of it being at a bar, maybe it's a cup of coffee.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's what do they call it? The painting clinics, right? Where you just go sit down, you guys do like an educated paint like trees and shit, right? I found a lot of my therapy through art. I found a lot of it through music. But if there's any sort of conclusion to everything that we're talking about, is that, and I think I told my wife this, it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
You're talking about like people's careers ending. Yes. 20 years ago, I can't believe I said 20 years ago, but yes, 20 years ago when I came in, you would lose your career if you went to mental health.
Yeah.
Now it doesn't exist. It's okay to not be okay. Talk to somebody.
Yep.
Tell them that it's all right. I wish I'd have done that. Now, the argument to that is I love my life. I'm happy, but it all happened for a reason.
Yeah.
I wanted to hit 20. I didn't. But I also didn't have all the tools like Strike, what you're talking about, at the time. So we should encourage people to use them.
Yep.
You
Absolutely.
know what I mean? Like,
Absolutely.
that's exactly what we should do.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. When the money was allocated, the people were put in place for a reason, because for the majority of the war, we didn't have it, and we saw finally some people saw that, hey, this could actually benefit,
Right.
and now we do have it. Yeah, absolutely. It does need to be used, and it is being used more and more. And I gotta go talk to him, but I want to try and get one of them to come on and just talk about it, because like talk about. 'Cause I've talked to some of the psychs in different things, and then that event where I talked for a little bit, there was a guy that he was doing a like paid study or whatever to see, like, essentially like focused on EOD specifically.
Okay.
And he was talking with mainly Army EOD, but it was interesting because, and I'm gonna try not to screw this up, but there's like 4 kind of things that people can be generally, right? It's like willingness to take risk, a need to like have a very detailed plan, or or the opposite, basically. Like you kind of just like loosey goosey. Yep, and you have no willingness to take risk. And he said, as he started talking to more and more of the EOD guys, it was interesting because they tend to need to have a lot of a plan, but also willing to take a lot of risk, which is very, like, most people that need to have a lot of plan details in their plan
Don't take risks.
don't take risk. Exactly.
Yeah.
And but it's interesting because, and I think when you look at that, you got to look at, we're very different than, like, one, just the general populace,
But the military.
just general military. We're very different than that. And so it's good having people that are dedicated to us specifically, like our community, our EOD community, because they can over time learn. And, you know, luckily I haven't had anybody that said, like, you know, oh, I understand. I think the best thing that you can do as anybody that's in the professional mental health is understand that you don't need to understand.
Right.
All you need to do is be able to see what the issue is and provide them with tools so that, because like you said, it doesn't matter how many times you go, if you as the individual don't do the work, you're not going to get better.
Right.
You know?
No, absolutely. And I think it's very important. I think it's paramount that people understand that, you know, it's not just your home life, but it's your personal life. So, and what I mean by, like, home not being personal, that's not what I mean. But it's like diet,
Right.
exercise, sleep. And if you do those things, I'm not saying it's going to fix you overnight, but if you have the discipline to do it,
Mm-hmm.
then you're going to keep doing the other things that you need to actually do, which is go see mental health.
Yeah.
Now, I don't do meds. Only thing I really have for meds outside of my lung cancer is sleep meds. But I don't use them entirely. I have a woman that cooks great food. Take care of my kids. I go to work every day. But by doing that with my mental health appointments and everything else, it just gives me that sustainment. It gives me that ability to process everything. So before I wake up feeling sorry about myself, or I end up wake up pissed off because of whoever's not alive, or who I lost, or who's hurt or wounded or whatever, I can only change the dynamic of the life that I live. And if I want to honor the people that I've lost, then I might as well live the best life that I have.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
That's how I look at it. There's a lot of people out there that want to tell their story for an ulterior motive.
Mhm.
Right? They want to say how cool or badass they were.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit about that. I don't. You know why? Because I don't even care if you do 35 years. At one point in your life, you're going to retire.
Yep.
You're going to have to be a granddad. You're going to have to be a husband. You're going to have to exist outside of this controlled chaos, which is what we live in.
Yeah.
So might as well do it now, right? I'm not saying don't make the job your priority, but also don't make the job your identity.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah, that is a big thing. I've talked with a few people about it, and I think, you know, and we're kind of talking about the lack thereof at the beginning of our conversation. But a big thing that is super important in a job like this is to have some kind of interest outside of the job. I think, man, you know, like talk with Scott Weaver, his thing, cars, right? Like he's just been into
That shitty Mustang thing.
got called out, Scott. But you know, like if you have that outside interest, if you're into cars and you actually make an effort towards it, that's the other thing, is like there's a lot of us can be into something but be like, bah, I'm just gonna go home and stay home, you know.
Right.
But if you find that community that really has nothing to do with your work, it can give you that release. It can help you with that, like, I'm not thinking about this thing 100% of my day. Like,
Right.
even if it's just a couple hours every few days that you're out doing whatever it is, woodworking, doing some kind of extracurricular activity, whatever, give you that like kind of time away to help reset.
No, absolutely. And I think a lot of guys have set that tone. I mean, Jeff O'Connor is one of them.
Yep.
I mean, with his woodworking, that's amazing. Scott, even though he has a shitty Mustang, cars, guys training, like Mitch Aguilar, he's a SEAL that I worked with. I mean, his massive stuff, violent hippie, great guy. But you give people those outlets, motorcycles. I mean, biggest reason that I stayed sober for a while was landscaping.
Yeah.
I just like mowing grass. I like cutting trees down.
Yeah.
But yes, you're absolutely right. The biggest thing is that a lot of people need to realize that your job is not your identity,
Right.
right?
Yep.
You have to become your own person and not allow it to pull you into something to where that's the only thing that you identify with, because then you'll lose yourself.
Right.
A lot of kids are coming in 18, 19 years old. They haven't been adults yet.
Mm-hmm.
I was the same way. But that's kind of where I lost myself.
Yeah.
Because I was a tobacco farmer, I raised cows, lived on a farm, was good with the gun.
Yeah.
Why not go do this, right? But then when I retired, I was 35-ish. I don't know. It was a while ago. But then I didn't have an identity. I didn't know who I was. And so it's kind of like one of those things what I'm saying. Shave your face in the morning,
Yep.
right? Even if you don't have a beard. Look yourself in the mirror. Talk to yourself. Say, what can I do better?
Mm-hmm.
Because we're the only ones that know what we aren't doing well in, right?
Yeah.
I would never come to you and be like, I'm a shitty dad, right? No, I'm not. I'm a great dad. But
Right.
I would never tell you that. So when you're looking in the mirror and you don't like who you have, you don't like who's staring you back in the face, your reflection, that's what you need to face.
Yeah.
And that's the hard part, is owning it. On the other side of it is that when you need that help, you need to have that leadership that allows you to say, I need to go talk to somebody.
Yep.
And it not being career ending,
Right.
right? I saw a lot of guys put it off for the longest time. And I fell into the same signal. But the reality of it is, the whole point behind us doing this podcast is I broke.
Yeah.
I broke overnight. I'll never forget. I was in Virginia Beach when Scott died, and I got the call, and I collapsed beside my truck. Actually, Rick Thomas's truck was barring it. Well, mine was in the shop. And after that, I kind of fell apart. I hid it for a while. I think a lot of people saw it. But I fell apart, and that's why I left the training unit so fast. I was like, give me a platoon right now, because I wanted to go and some sort of retribution back
Right.
in the day.
Yeah.
But I was doing a lot of dumb shit. I was in the kill house. And I don't even care if they give a shit, but I had airplane bottles in my pocket. I was doing house runs.
Yeah.
I'd never shot so good in my life. But I had airplane bottles of vodka, and I would go home, I'd nap it off, or I'd go back to work. And now that I think about it, I'm like, well, that's absolutely irresponsible. I'm in a live gun house with airplane bottles in my pocket, right?
Yeah.
But that's how I was dealing with it.
Yeah.
Had somebody just hit the brakes and said no, probably would have ended up different, but this is exactly the path that I'm supposed to be on. And that's the whole reason that I'm here,
Yeah.
is just to allow people to understand, like I said, it's okay to not be okay.
Right.
What you need to is when you sit there by yourself, no wife, no kids, no nothing, and you think about it, you know if you're not all right.
Mm-hmm.
But then what do you do from there?
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it, I appreciate you coming on and talking about that and being as open as you were, because I know from previous podcasts on different subjects and different things, right? People will reach out to me. Generally every other podcast, at least, there will be a couple people that'll reach out and, hey man, just a few ago on a somewhat similar kind of topic. I had several people reach out to me and different things, and one dude is like, "Hey man, I'm out actually driving on a work trip right now, and I listen to podcasts because it's a long drive, and it's exactly what I needed to hear as a leader in that spot." And similar subject, we're talking about like, hey, as leaders, we need to be able to open up that space for dudes that need to maybe take a step back, go get help, whatever, not just tell them to suck it up and move on, and just, I've also had from the other side where it's like, hey man, I appreciate that, that person came on and told their story.
Right.
I was going down the same path. Like I'm thinking about it, and it's sometimes hard to do, to be able to like make that decision that you're like, this is a controversial, touchy subject, but I guess I'll go out there and put it out there, but I guarantee there's a bunch of people that it'll help on both sides.
And like I said, and I was hesitant. I mean, it's been almost a year now. I think this will be like kind of the last thing that I say. I will never forget, before I went to SARP, I don't know if the mobile unit knew that I was going down that road. It was after I left the training unit. But I was bad. And coming to find out, they waved me through the gate. They had the CO and the CMC. Hey, you need to come aboard. They knew I was bad.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have been driving.
Yeah.
I was in a bad way. But I went to the CMC's office. It was Ryan Burton at the time. And for him to look at me and see me that messed up and cry before he sent me to SARP, if I were going to say anything different, is I wish I was at CMC.
Yeah.
He knew me. And I loved him for it. He tried to save my career, but he couldn't. It had nothing to do with him. It was all me at the time. But we've all been there. We've all lost people. We've all killed people. We've all done terrible things. But at one point, this will end. And what this being is our military career. What doesn't end is being a parent. What doesn't end is being a husband or a wife or anything. And we know when we're not okay. It's hard to admit it. And I'm not saying that group hasn't done everything in the world to give us the opportunities to make ourselves right. But I would rather people not wait till it's 20 years too late. I'd rather them do it now. I don't have to come out here and tell all the stories about all the things that I did. Nobody gives a shit. It'll be distant history way back in the years. Like, nobody cares. People need to not lose their sense of humanity, and they need to not focus on a job that will always be there. I retired. You're going to retire.
Yep.
Somebody is going to fill those shoes. So if we care about posterity, then we care about ourselves and our family first, and then we make that move into that transition. Because that transition's hard. When that door closes, it doesn't open back up.
Yeah.
You turn around and you're not wearing a uniform again. So
I think that's a perfect ending, man. I think that's a solid challenge for everybody out there, myself included, to make sure that the job isn't what we're working for. It's our family and our friends and our loved ones on the outside. That's what we're working for. That's what's going to be there at the end.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah,
Absolutely.
appreciate you coming and sharing, man.
Appreciate it, brother. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, dude. Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to the Echo Oscar Delta podcast, where we talk to Navy EOD techs and hear the stories that they want to share.